Before we start the webinar, I want to understand what your expectations from this webinar are. What are the primary problems you are trying to solve? So with that, I'm going to put a chat pod here where we will have participant inputs. And so I'd like to understand what is the main reason why you're here? What problems are you facing with GMAT reading comprehension? Okay. I'm going to just expand that chat part so that it overlaps over the two leftmost bars. Wants to solve problems quicker. Okay. Timing seems to be an issue. I have Lakshay and a few others. Accuracy with correct answers. Okay. That's Thai. Just starting out, want to learn this faster. Okay. The time it takes to cover the paragraph, okay, or the passage as we call it in the context of GMAT RC. That's, again, I see two timing issues. Let's see what else. Where are you faltering? And as you're doing this, add some context to this entire conversation to really say, my RC ability is X, Y, Z. So put in that RC ability and then really say, this is how I think, this is the main problem that I'd like to solve. Attention span. Okay, that's good. That's a very, very relevant problem. Let's see a few others. We have Vishnu, we have Hamza, we have Abhishek, or Sai, and Arsh, and Parisha. So if you add some context there, I think that context enriches the entire conversation. So for example, if Parisha were to say I'm at an 80th percentile and have an attention span issue, that solution would be slightly different from what it would be if she were to say that that she's at a 40th percentile or so. How to understand difficult comprehension? We're going to definitely talk about that. Rajat says to improve timing and accuracy. '70th percentile in verbal, want to increase to 80. Okay, that's good. Difficulty in focusing a passage that I'm not interested in. Again, very, it's a common problem. It's a problem that I've heard, and we'll definitely talk about this here. Okay, if there are any other problems, I'd like to address them, list them over here so that at the end of this webinar, we can really see, have we addressed these issues? Do you have good answers? Do you have a good path forward to solve each of the problems that you respectively have? Okay, Lakshya is a really specific issue, which is, I really love how Lakshya has portrayed this. So that's really good. I encourage each one of you to learn from how specific this problem is, because the more specific you are, the more the easier it is for us to provide a solution to it, and the more specific the solution is, the faster is the implementation of that solution. Last two seemingly similar options. We'll see that. We'll see a lot of last two seemingly similar, and why those are not similar. You'll learn that as well. Okay. So with that, I'm going to actually move forward over here. I'm going to just give you some context. So for those of you who know e-GMAT, we're one of the top test prep companies, one of the oldest GMAT Club partners. I think the only partner older than us that's on GMAT Club is Manhattan Prep. And for those of you who've read reviews, we've upwards of 2,000 reviews. In fact, close to 2,700 reviews on GMAT Club here. We host a number of free webinars. This is one of our free webinars. We have a CR webinar next Saturday, about 6 days from today, on 13th of July, and then we have an algebra webinar, which is next Sunday, exactly a week from now. In the CR webinar, we'll talk about pre-thinking. We're going to learn what pre-thinking is. We're going to focus on visualizing information and how to create logical structures of paragraphs to address So the most challenging CR questions. And think of the CR session as something which is analogous to this particular session. And then we're going to apply the same skills on TPA or two-part analysis as well. On the algebra side of things, we're going to actually build up to inequalities and absolute values. This is going to focus on the entire algebra aspect of the quant GFE. So it's not just about inequalities and absolute values. We build up to that, but prior to that, we also look at linear equations, quadratic equations, and so on and so forth. So if any of these topics are areas that you need to improve on, make sure you definitely register for these webinars. Then a lot of people ask, this question: how can I improve my GMAT verbal skills outside of just studying for the GMAT? So I recorded a video where in which we talk about that. That's number 3 on the top left-hand corner. 3 powerful strategies to boost your GMAT verbal skills. So this is something that someone asked, and I crafted a response. And I thought it's good to really convert this into something that can be consumed again and again. So if you want to really just see how can you improve your verbal skills, and this is in general, not just about GMAT verbal, but in general, but reading better and extracting more from every element or every word that you read. These 3 strategies will help you in that. And then for those of you who are considering an e-GMAT course, we have a phenomenal deal that's going on. I think it's the last couple of days of that. So you probably have an email from me already. But for those of you who are not aware of this is the link to that in top left-hand corner, point number 4 over there. Okay, I'm going to hide these and this and hide this over here. We also ask a couple of poll questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the test? And you can really see we have a split jury here. We have many of you who plan to take the test in the next 15 days. That's presumably you guys are applying for round 1, another 24% in 15 to 30 days. And then half the class has more than a month before they actually take the exam. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. As we go there, you would see what I call as a presentation pod, and below the presentation pod, I'm going to add a Q&A or a question and answer pod. If you have any question during this webinar, you can put that question in the Q&A pod. That way, those questions go in a queue, and I get to them when the time's appropriate. Usually, if the question's about something that we're talking about, then I get to that question within 5 minutes. If it's something which is a lot more strategic, then it does take me, I address it at the appropriate time overall. Now, on the right-hand side where you see the short answer flow is a place where I ask my questions and then you respond to those questions here. So we'll have a number of poll questions, a number of short answer pod questions here during this time. Okay, before we talk about just how to use GMAT RC, I'm going to talk briefly about your study plan, and to do that, I'm going to share my screen over here. Let me just. You should be able to see my screen fairly soon. All right. So each one of you should have a personalized study plan, and we're going to start with creating one for you, or telling you how to create one. So I already have a plan that's created. I'm going to go about creating a new plan here. So we're going to create a study plan for someone who wants to improve who wants to get to a score of 685. I want to set this as target, and then the current score, let's say that person has a current score of 575 here. They've taken a SIGMAX mock, which is an e-GMAT mock test that gives you all the data points that you need to build the study plan. If you've taken an MBA.com, or if you've actually taken the GMAT, then you can also get those data points here. So again, you now are looking for a 110-point improvement, aiming to go from a 62nd percentile to a 97th percentile. So with that, let's load your sectional scores. Let's say you're someone who's got a 77 in verbal, 83 in quant, and correspondingly, the planner is smart enough to really say your DI score has to be between 74 and 78. So I'm going to say 76 in data insight. So about a 50th percentile in DI here. So the planner understands your strengths, your weaknesses, and there are about 99 ways to go from, and you can really see as I zoom this in, to go from a 575 to a 685. The planner looks at each of those 99 ways, evaluates your strengths and weaknesses, and recommends a good path for you. So you can really see here. I'm going to just zoom it out. I'm going to reset this so that it understands your quant strength and says, hey, if you want to get to a 685, let's kind of push that strength to the limit. Let's get you a Q88, then a V83, and then your DI score. You just need to get to a 90th percentile on DI. And you can really see how it understands your quant, verbal, and DI strengths. Now, you could pick a different split here. You could really say, hey, I want to go for an 84 here, an 87 here, and an 81 here, and that would still get you, it'll tell you how much more challenging it is, but it'll still get you to that score. So it'll always ensure that whatever combination you choose, you get to your target. So I'm going to take the recommended path. I'm going to move forward here. Um, and then with this, it takes these data points into account and gives you an approximate timeline over here. So it says, hey, this is your verbal. You're aiming to go from a 33rd percentile to an 86th percentile. In quant, you're aiming to go from an 81st to a 95th percentile. And similarly, you can see the changes in the DI as well. And it gives you some approximate times over here. So overall, to get this 110-point improvement, you are looking at a very high level, about 250 hours, give or take here. Now, this number is going to change as we provide more data to the tool. So here, let's provide your subsectional abilities in CR and in RC here. So here, 39 percentile in CR, 28 percentile in RC. Again, SIGMAX mock test provides these things. Your official mocks also provide these two data points. So again, that estimate's refined here. This assumes you're spending about 20 hours a week. So I'm going to accept this. I'm going to move forward here. Same thing in quant. So let's say you are at a 73rd percentile here and about an 84th percentile in algebra. Again, you're going to see those times updated based on these data points. So about 66 hours over here, 3.3 weeks and 20 hours per week, about 66 hours. And then we're going to do the same thing in DI. Considering you're strong in quant, you're going to actually have much higher scores in DS and GI and TA. So with that, the DI data points would also be more precise here. Again, you can see not a whole lot of change here, but you get the specifics as to how long would you need to spend in data sufficiency versus GI and TA versus TP and MSR. You accept this, you move forward with this, and you can see these updated times here. So the numbers have gone down slightly. You can see about 220 odd hours rather than 250. So slightly more precise here in this case. Now, again, you can start with verbal, move to quant, then move to DI, or you can, to pick a different study sequence. I always recommend doing verbal, starting with verbal or quant, because DI is a combination of either verbal or quant here. Then you can pick up how many hours can you spend. Let's say you can study a lot more on Mondays and Tuesdays. You can do that, and as you do that, and as you pick a start date, it'll give you a tentative GMAT date here. I guess I say, hey, you can take the test on 8th of October in this case. If you wanted to pick an earlier date, you could have added more hours per week to bring that time in. Now, with that, your plan's more or less ready. You can now understand your sectional journey. You're starting with verbal. You're going to spend the first 2.5 weeks on critical reasoning. You're going to spend the next 1.3 weeks on reading comprehension. You can really see the total time is 92 hours. Then same thing with quant, about 65 hours on quant and about 84 hours in data sufficiency here. And as you go into the detail here, you would really see exactly what you need to do. You'd start with master comprehension, then go to critical reasoning, then go to reading comprehension. You can see these times put in over here. And after finishing the CR course, you'll be doing cementing. After finishing the RC course, we're doing cementing. And then you have time for test readiness as well. So every aspect's taken into account over here. And as you go there, you can save this plan, and then you can execute this. And as you do that, you get a day-by-day plan which tells you what is it that you need to do over here. And the beauty of this system is that you can keep this updated. So it so happens that you realize that, hey, on this particular day, you cannot, let me to the control minus minus. So yeah, on the 17th, you can't study. You can make it a no study day. You can save and close, and this plan would be updated. If on a few other days you kind of realize that, hey, you can put in 4 hours, so you can make this 4, and the plan would adjust automatically. So you can keep this updated. If it so happens that you find that, hey, you're not able to put in 4 hours on Mondays, but you can put in 3 hours on Wednesdays, you can update this, and the plan would be updated accordingly here, in this case. And if you want to refer back to the plan, you can always look at the same thing here in this case. So all of these data points are there, the execution modes here, and as you complete these milestones, you can really finish those milestones. You'll get notifications to finish the same. All right. So hopefully you guys found that that useful. Okay, was that useful? Was that study plan piece useful for you? I'm going to see if I can turn my webcam on again. You can put your answers in the short answer poll here. All right. Now with that, I'm going to just move forward with this. And we're going to talk about Coach Connect slightly later. By the way, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think right now about 23,000 students who are connected with me on LinkedIn over here. And yes, the person who says I have a quick doubt, you can ask that doubt over here. Now, I'm assuming most of you are aiming for a score of 645 or higher here if you're here on a Sunday morning. If you are aiming for that score, given how easy it is to improve on GMAT RC, I'd recommend that you should aim for at least an 80th percentile, if not a 90th percentile ability. Preferably, if you want to get to a score of 675 or higher, your target ability should be 90th percentile or higher. So with that, I want to understand how you approach GMAT RC today. So I'm going to actually put in a poll question. So there are 3 approaches that people usually have when it comes to GMAT RC. Here is the poll question here. The first approach is where people skim through the passage, go to the question, and come back to the passage. The second approach is where people look at the questions first and then go to specific aspects of the passage. The third approach is where people look at spend their time reading the passage and then look at the questions. So I have about 52 students here in the webinar. I want to understand which approach you take. Okay. Five, four, three, two. I just have about 22 responses. I'd prefer if you can if I can get a few more responses. I have 26 responses so far. Let's get to about 30. 29, 30 responses. Let me end the poll. And this is where when you have a reasonable number of responses, we can draw some inferences here. We have about 31 responses. We already see about 61% of people spend the time reading the passage. That's good. We recommend doing that. And then they go to questions. But then you see a significant number of people either skim through the passage or look at the questions first. My goal here would be, if you're someone who's spending time reading the passage, I want to make sure to become a much more effective reader. I want to tell you how to go about taking notes. If you are in categories 1 or 2, I want to ensure that I give you justification as to why you should spend time reading the passage first and how should you go about doing that. We're going to talk about reading like a manager versus reading like an engineer in that context as well. Okay. So now this is the second question of the self-evaluation. It says, hey, what level of understanding do you have before you actually start answering questions? This is primarily for people who follow approach 3, where they spend time reading the passage. This is a self-evaluation. Five, four, three, two, and one. I'm going to end the poll. Broadcast results. So this is a really good. This for me is a very useful data point because I can really see where people are. A couple of you who are at that 90 to 100%, but then many of you are below that 90%. My goal, and this is a self-evaluation, so it's really important to understand that. My goal is for those of you who are at that 90 to 100%, I want to tell you how do you go even beyond that. I want to tell you how to read the passage so that you do two things. One, you extract at least 50% more, and yes, there is that headroom of 60%, 50% more. And then the second thing is, I want to ensure that whatever you extract it with that mindset that helps you answer questions. For those of you who are below that 90%, I want to push you one level up. So those between 50 and 75, I want to push you to that 75 to 90, and then give you a roadmap to go from that beyond that 90. Those who are in that 75 to 90, I want to push you to at least 90 to 100, if not more there. Okay, so that's my goal. Now you tell me towards the end of this webinar if you feel that you are well on that way towards that goal. Now this webinar, in my opinion, is the beginning of a journey as to how you move towards your path to excellence. It's not a one-stop shop where you go through this webinar and you'd suddenly be really good at GMAT RC. This webinar will provide a framework. You still will have to execute on that framework. You still will have to build those neural connections that this framework enables. And once those connections are built, and as you are in that process of building those connections, you'd automatically experience that improvement there. Okay. Meanwhile, I have a couple of questions about the study plan. So Japnit says, my study plan in place, but the system says one of the checklist points have not been completed. Could you please check towards the end? So Japnit, we have an excellent support team. So write to the support team. I'm going to share the email address, not just with this data point, but any other doubts that you have, and they'll be happy to address that. And Ash says, yeah, the study plan wasn't helpful. It seemed like a promo pitch. Again, Ash, this is the template of a study plan that you ought to have. Unfortunately, pretty much e-GMAT's the only company that's spent the time to build a system such as this. So yes, it may sound like a promo pitch, but I think it's really essential that you have something like this there. All right. So my first thing over here would be how do we get uh, as much as possible from the passage, and again with that mindset that we are here to answer questions in a manner very similar to what a manager would do. So we're going to talk about reading like a manager versus reading like an engineer. We are also going to employ reading strategies here, some very, very specific strategies as to how to read the passage. And I have about 5 small passages and 2 large passages. So it's a lot of content that we have that we'll cover, and our focus would be to apply those reading strategies in this case. Now, many of you said you take longer to answer questions. You're confused between the last 2 answer choices. So a lot of that happens when you don't understand what the choice is saying, or you don't have a really good passage map in mind. So I'm going to demonstrate how to apply, how to use the information that you've gathered from the passage and answer questions correctly. I'm also going to talk about how to read answer choices so that you understand what the choice is saying. Usually people are confused because of one of these 2 things here. Actually, sometimes people don't understand what the question's asking. That also is the case, but that's not as common a problem. And again, as I said, we're going to apply it on multiple passages here. Now, some of you already said that you get bored with passages. How many of you feel that? You get bored with passages when you see passages either in humanities, for some of you they're sciences, for some of you it's econ. How many of you kind of feel that happens? Okay. Now, with regards to GMAT RC, one thing that you have to recognize is GMAT RC is an evaluation of your ability to make decisions, draw information from the passage and make decisions. And there's common themes regardless of the passage type. In the humanities passage, may really just say, hey, certain entities were treated a certain way. That led to a certain impact on those entities. Their behaviors were changed in a certain way. That led to a certain impact on the society. Now, many of you might really say, hey, why the hell is that important for me to learn? I want to become a manager. I want to lead organizations. Why should I care about women emancipation, or why should I care about if it's an econ policy passage with regards to how the patent system was 200 years ago? How many of you feel that? Why should I care about those things when it comes to this? I want to become a manager. This is extremely boring. Okay. Now, one thing you have to really realize is when you become a manager, you run organizations. And in organizations, understanding the implications of how entities are treated and the decisions you make and how those decisions propagate throughout an organization are really, really important. And through various contexts, your ability to attribute causality or correlations is evaluated in multiple ways when you are a manager or a leader there. Similarly, if there's a certain discovery, the implications of that, for you to be able to understand when technical piece of information is presented to you and what implications can you draw from it and what actions can you put is something that you would use incredibly as a manager. So when you think about GMAT RC, throw that attitude away where you say, hey, how is this going to be relevant? Because all of this is relevant to you, either directly or indirectly, and have that attitude of getting immersed in the passage and understanding the author's intent. And read like a manager. Do you guys understand what is reading like a manager versus reading like an engineer means? Do you understand that? No. Okay. So, not really. So here's a short article on or rather, I'd say, a passage on what I did right before this. So most of us, when in our current jobs, are subject matter experts or SMEs, as is written over there. And whenever we read a piece of information, we try and understand it inside out and attribute causality to it. Reading like a manager is actually kind of doing somewhat the opposite, where you say, I'm not the SME, the person who's sharing information with me is the subject matter expert. I will understand why the SME is written, what he has written, and how does it impact me. Okay. Reading like an engineer is actually really thinking like an SME over here. So here's an example in this case. So if someone tells you that the team has implemented a new caching system that has improved response times by 30%, however, we are experiencing these intermittent errors during peak load times, it may be related to database connection issues. So if you are a manager, you're going to focus on what you've achieved and the impact of it. So what you're going to really say is, hey, there's an improvement in performance that's there. There's some problem that's occurring. And essentially, it seems like that, the author has found some possible cause or a possible set of causes. So you would really say, let's kind of figure out how can I help the author? What freedom does the author need? So that's kind of reading like a manager. If you read like an engineer, you kind of focus much more on what caching is. You're going to focus much more on essentially, are they approaching things the right way? And you would go into doing the root cause analysis there. Okay. So that's kind of the difference between reading like a manager and reading like an engineer. How many of you, when you read a passage and you really just kind of go into the nuts and bolts, if author provides details of certain things, you really try and understand why those details are happening? How many of you do that, where you're reading like an engineer versus a manager? Okay. Try and move away from reading like an engineer. I just see one yes, not very many yeses here. And the reason for that is because, teachers, economists, engineers, musicians take the GMAT, and just the variety of topics that you see on the GMAT. You're not expected to know the technical details of all of those topics there. So the GMAT's not going to have you ask you questions on the technical details, unless and until those details are explicitly explained. And if it's explicitly explained, it'll be done in a manner that you'd be able to understand those. Okay. So just have that attitude of this over here. Now, the second piece that I want to make sure that you understand is that we need to be able to comprehend what we read. And for many of you, this means slowing down. So when you're reading a sentence, you need to be able to, especially if it's a large sentence, you need to be able to break it into small parts and understand that. Use keywords to predict what the author is going to say. Um, in GMAT RP, there are a ton of keywords that the author uses to talk about whether he's going to support the information that's been said or he's going to go against. Is the author drawing a comparison, or is the author doing a contrast? So that's something that you have to be able to infer from those keywords. And when you do that, it allows you to answer inference questions. It allows you to answer detailed questions a lot better. It also helps you read faster because you know what the author is going to talk about. Okay, as you go from paragraph one to another to second paragraph, and GMAT RC, the passages are becoming longer these days. You've got to be able to summarize paragraphs so that you don't lose the chain of thought. Doing these three things is absolutely important, especially during the learning phase, so that you learn to read GMAT RC properly. And if you truly want to improve on RC, if you truly want to reduce the time to answer questions, do all of this extremely slowly, because that's when you build those neural connections. The slower you go, the faster you are actually on GMAT RC. And I'm going to prove that to you. But to begin with, let's kind of apply what we've learned on this one short passage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a passage. It's a single line passage. It's a long line, but a single line passage. I want you to put in your summaries here. So put in your summaries, and then I'm going to actually show the question stem here. So you have about a minute to do this. I'm going to pause my video. I'm going to mute myself as well. All right, you guys have another 15 seconds. Get those summaries in the short answer part. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, it's really important that that you put those summaries in, because what is going to be interesting is that as multiple people put their summaries in, you can really see how different people, while reading the same piece of text, extract different things from the passage. Okay, so I have about 7 or 8 definitions here. I'm going to move this out. Then here is the passage here. Okay, so here's the passage, and I'm going to actually give you a poll question here. I want you to tell me, what does the author assume here? I want you to, so can you say, if you select still solving, that way I wouldn't have to time you guys. So if about 15 of you select still solving, but I still have just about 8 people who selected still solving. Can I get 15 of you to select still solving before I show the poll question? Thank you. Let me remove broadcast results. Here is the poll question. This is the main point question. I'm going to pause myself. But 70% of you are done. Get those answers in. But 80% are done. Three, two, and one. I'm going to end the poll. Broadcast the results. So first of all, I really appreciate the participation. It's really good participation. About 50 odd students here in the webinar, and I've gotten more than 30 odd responses. So that's really good participation. Truly, truly like that. You can see how we have a split jury here. We have choice C, which is extremely popular, choice B, that is extremely popular, choice. Well, choice D is the most popular, and it's also the correct answer, by the way. And choice A is quite popular as well. So I'm going to go through this in the detailed manner. But before I do that, you can really see it, in terms of when I talked about reading like a manager versus reading like an engineer, how that comes in over here. When I look at ethnocentrism has two extremes to it, the good and the evil side. The devotion to in-group directly correlates with hostility to out-group. That's more on the side of it reading like an engineer over here. Whereas when I look at extreme definition, in-group positive, out-group negative, that's much more like reading like a manager, or defines EC or ethnocentrism in an extreme way as an in-group definition. Or author presents a definition of E that he finds extreme. So that's these are really good reading like a manager kind of scenarios there. So just wanted to highlight these things to really say, hey, this is something that exists out there. Actually, let me bring my short answer pod back in this case. So yeah, so this is something that's evident from the responses here. So with that, let me clear this. I'm gonna hide the short answer part over here. Okay. So what's going here? Bordering on the extreme, one definition. So the moment you really see this bordering on the extreme, what comes to your mind? The moment you actually see bordering on the extreme, what's your inference? One definition. What inference do you draw if you are reading this from the author's point of view? Bordering on the extreme, one definition. Just over here. There could be other views, right? Okay. What else? One extreme view is about to be presented. Okay. Does the author necessarily, is this the author's view, first of all? Is this the author's view that's going to come? No, it's an extreme view. The author is not presenting his view or providing his view. The author is merely presenting information. Okay. Does everyone understand this now? The author here is merely presenting information. Versus whether we providing his own opinion. He's not providing his own opinion of what EC is. He's just presenting information, and his opinion is that this is an extreme definition of EC or ethnocentrism. So one of the first things that I want you to recognize right away is the author is presenting information on EC. So what does that extreme view considers? That extreme view considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. Okay. How many of you were worried when you saw the word schismatic here? How many of you said, oh, schismatic, I don't know the meaning of schismatic. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer this question correctly. Now, in GMAT RC, there will be times when you will see some words that you don't know of. And in general, if you read around those words, you're going to be able to infer the meaning properly. So when you see those words, don't worry, focus on reading around those. Okay. So one definition of EC considers it some sort of a differentiation in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. Okay. How many of you tried to understand each and every aspect of it? How many of you tried to understand every aspect of it? Internal cohesion, relative peace, blah, 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 blah. Okay. If you were to summarize all of this, what would be a good summary? Just for all of this, what would be a good summary for all of this? Would love for your people be a good summary? Would this be a good summary? I'm talking to about before correlated, so before this point, right? Love for your people are correlated with a sort of hostility toward outgroup, which means hatred for outgroup over here. So when you go over here, okay, this would be which are often perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil. Okay, so the first thing that you have to summarize, if you were to do this, is the author is presenting an exaggerated definition as per this difference of EC, which has some sort of a differentiation in as per which two things are linked. One is love for your people, and the second is hatred towards outside. So what is the author doing? The author is presenting a definition, indicates that that's not the most precise definition. It is somewhat exaggerated, and these two things are linked together. Okay. So let's kind of start with our poll question. I'm going to really talk about how you guys polled here. P1, Q1. This is how you guys polled. 4 of you chose choice A, 3 choice B, and then see over here. Choice A says they criticize a concept that encourages hostility. Does the author say EC is bad? Does the author say that? Does the author say that EC encourages hostility, which means that it actually increases hostility? No. The author doesn't say either one of these. This is wrong, which makes choice A wrong. People who chose choice A, why is it that what made choice A attractive for you? People who chose choice A. What made choice A attractive? Again, the more you participate, the better it would be for you. Hostility, but did you not focus on the word encourages or criticize? Similar words. Again, that's kind of where GMAT RC is not a VLOOKUP. It is about understanding. Let's look at choice B. To evaluate the concept of EC while enlisting its various features. Evaluating something means listing the pros and cons of it. Does the author list pros and cons of EC? No. Now, listing its various features and defining something are two very, very different things. As an example, if I were to define a smartphone is a device that makes you productive on the go. If I were to list the various features of a smartphone typically has a large screen, a fast processor, a ton of apps, an easy interface through which I can access interface information, and a fast data connection. So what I just described are the features. The definition on the other hand is something very different. Okay. Choice C, to define the concept of EC, which leads to hierarchy. So does the author present a definition or the author defines it? The author doesn't define EC. This is not the author's definition. Okay. And then EC doesn't cause hierarchy among social groups. Okay. Which actually brings us to the correct answer choice, which says to introduce the concept of EC. So prior to reading this passage, we had no idea what EC was. Now we have an idea of what EC is. How does he do that? He presents a view on that introduction, which is the fact that this is an extreme form of EC. This is an extreme definition. That's the author's view over here, and that's where this is correct. So which makes choice B correct. Now, what did you learn from this? What is it that you're going to do to make sure you don't repeat a mistake such as this one? This was, again, hard passage, a topic that people usually don't find very attractive. But what you really saw was if you read like a manager, you're going to find that it's not the technicalities that the passage is testing, but your understanding of what relationships are presented, how they link to each other. Okay. And Jitali, your question. First of all, no one calls me sir. Everyone calls me Rajat. No one calls Payal ma'am. Everyone calls her Payal. So Jitali's question was, some RC passages are a little bit boring, so I feel like skipping this. This is an example, I think, of one of those RC passages. But can you really see how this is not so much about what EC is, but what the author over here is doing? And if you focus your attention on that, you're going to find that the passage type or the topic of the passage is irrelevant to what's being talked about here. Now, why did you make mistake? Was it in reading the passage? Was it understanding the answer choices? Or was it not understanding what the question was asking? Can you please answer this question? Those who made a mistake, half of you made a mistake. If you were to fill an error log for this, if you were to really say, what is it that you're going to do? No, why were you confused between C and D? Tell me. What was the confusion? What was the cause of that confusion? Unless and until we get to the root cause of it, you're not going to be able to avoid that confusion next time. First of all, if you were to go back to choice C, is that correct in any way? Okay, meaning of the passage was not getting clear to me even after reading it through. Got attached to C and skimming through option D. Did not understand the passage fully. Okay. Author defining versus author presenting. That's the kind of answer that I was looking for, because that's very specific. Can't differentiate between define and to give a view. So now hopefully you can. Okay. See, you guys are getting specific now. This is what I want you to be. I want each one of you to be specific, because you're not going to be able to get to this by solving hundreds and hundreds of passages. You're going to be able to improve only by getting specific. Okay. What's surprising here is I did not really see a choice that would. I did not really see people think I didn't know what evaluate or what criticize meant over here, which is a bit surprising. Okay. So we have another version of the passage. I want you to tell me what the main point of the passage is. So read through this over here. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to pause my video. And I want you to tell me once you're done reading the passage. Put your passage summaries in the short answer part here. All right, I'd like to see the main point in the short answer poll if you're done reading. I see a few responses. Let's get to all right. It's lots and lots of. So here is the passage at the bottom. It's this exact same poll here. And I'm going to remove broadcast results. I'm going to reopen the poll. I want you to tell me What's the main idea? What's the main purpose? Okay, 90+% of the class is done. Get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. End the poll and broadcast the results. Okay, 72% of you got this right. It is to evaluate the concept of EC while enlisting its various features. You can really see that. Why? Because the author presents the pros and the cons of EC, which is kind of what the definition of evaluation is. Now, those of you who've chosen choice D, it's the author does introduce EC. That's something that's definitely there, but that's what I call as partial scope. The author presents the pros and cons of EC, which is not what's captured in choice D here. And the author is not presenting a view on it. The author presents multiple um, uh, competing. Not the author presents the positives and the negatives of EC. And again, remember, the author is not presenting information here. The author is providing his own view. Were you able to see this? That the author, rather than presenting someone else's view here, was providing his own view? Were you able to see this when you really see at one extreme, it manifests in a severe in-group, out-group differentiation? That's the author's view here. Okay. Now, does that help you read this slightly better? I have two more versions of this here. I'm going to share that in the PDF. And I'm going to provide the answers to these two versions on our YouTube channel in the community aspect of the YouTube channel. So definitely be on a lookout for that. When I share the PDF over here, I want you to do this. So these are same passages, well, the same concept, more or less, but two slightly different passages here, and the answer choices are the same. So the goal over here is for you to get a really good understanding of what criticism is, what is defining the concept, what is evaluating a concept, what is introducing a concept, what does all of those mean, and that way I think you'll have much more clarity on what these terms are, how the structures of or how the architecture of the passage changes if you want to move from one to the other. You can really see how, as we went from introduction to evaluation, the architecture of the passage changed. The other two will tell you how, if you were to go from introduction to criticism, the architecture of the passage would change. And just do a compare and contrast there, and you'll get a much deeper understanding of how to visualize passage structures, which I think is an essential skill if you were to ASGMAT RC. Now, how are we doing so far? Are you guys learning things? Okay. Now, we're going to move towards, we saw main point. We're now going to move towards inference. So again, very, very similar stuff here. Do disregard the prior passage now. Consider this as a brand new passage. Again, put in your passage summary here. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half for this. Pause my video again, and we're going to move towards inference, as I said here. Okay. All right. I have quite a few summaries. Really like that. Love the participation here. So again, we're going to go through this a very similar process. What we have is, excuse me, let me share the passage with you guys. This is P2 here. For some reason, my P2 is no longer there. Let me figure out what just happened here. Just give me 30 seconds. I want to put P2 in the note spot so you have it for reference when you solve the questions. Passage 2. Yeah, here is passage 2. Okay. This. I think I'll have to get a new notes pod here. Yeah, this is good. Here is passage 2. Just gonna make sure the font's slightly larger because we have the real estate. Yeah, and I'm gonna hide this. So I need still solving before I show the poll here. 15 to 20 people should say still solving so that I don't time you guys. Perfect. Let me unmute myself, remove broadcast results, and here is the question. All right, about 80% of the class is done. 90% of the class is done. Pretty much everyone's done. 3, 2, and 1. We end the poll. We broadcast the results, and you can really see we have A, B, D, and E, 4 popular choices. C is probably the least popular choice, but I really like the participation again. Super happy with that. Thank you very much. Let me hide this. Let me hide this one as well, and bring back my short answer part here. So you can, I'm going to clear the answers as an inference question. So I want you to tell me what can be inferred from the statement. I'm going to really show you a poll question here. Where is my? So here is the poll question. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people. What can you infer from this? You have 3 options here. Some people regard the color blue as soothing. The color blue is soothing, or both the statements above. What can be considered based on this? Come on, I'm looking for about 20 to 24 on 25 answers. I have so far 19, 22, 23. Good. 25. We end the poll, broadcast results. 71% of you think that some people regard color blue soothing as correct. That's absolutely correct. Um, you guys are right. The other two choices are wrong. So let's kind of look at this. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on moods of people. When the author really says that, the author is presenting information. The author is not certain that the color blue is indeed soothing. The author is saying, hey, there are some folks who consider that color blue has a soothing effect on moods of people over here. Okay. Um, People who chose choices B or C, which were the color blue is soothing or both of the above. Can you see why this one is wrong here? Sorry, why this is wrong? And can you see why this is the correct choice? Okay. Now, had the author said the color blue has a soothing effect on moods of people, then uh, you would indeed be able to infer that the color blue is soothing. That's what this passage was testing. This is what essentially inference questions test. And Manu, thank you for the reinforcement. That is really useful here. Now, what is an inference? An inference is what the author of the passage, not what you, but the person who's written the passage believes to be 100% true. So essentially, the way I would look at this is to really say, if I had $100, 100 USD, and if I would bet $100 that given the information in the passage, this is what the author believes in, then that would be the correct inference. Okay. So let's look at this. Ethnocentrism and its canonical variants are deemed to be. What does deemed to be mean? Considered to be, right? They're considered to be intimately connected with XP. So EC is generally regarded as is also a good way to represent somebody else's opinion. Okay. Intimately connected with XP. What is XP? A complex attitude cum sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the stranger, the alien, and everything that the stranger and alien represents. Now, what is a summary of this piece over here? How could I summarize this? How could I summarize this? Hatred for the alien, negativity towards outsiders. Okay. Everyone's good with hatred for aliens or negativity towards outsiders. Simplifying, summarizing technical information. Remember, we talked about that. Everyone's good with this? Yes? Then let's move forward. Some sociocultural anthropologists even considered. What does the author really say? Even. What does the author really say? Vis-a-vis means towards. What's the implication of the word even? What is even used for? A more extreme case. Further emphasizing. Yes, that's really important. That's really important over here. Even is an important keyword. Let me actually show you what does even mean. Okay. Here are some examples here. Michael Jordan was the most dominant basketball player of his time. Some analysts even consider him to be the most dominant player of all time. What does the word even do over here? It talks about how dominant Jordan was. Okay, it increases that emphasis. So that's a positive emphasis. On the negative side, it works as well. GDP is increasingly a poor measure of prosperity. It is not even a reliable gauge of production. So it's really just it's emphasizing on the negative side as well. So even is an emphasis word here. Okay. So when you say even, consider XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. So what kind of emphasis are we talking about? What is it amplifying? What is even amplifying here? What even is amplifying here is the intimate connection, to really say, hey, they consider that connection to be so close that they're really just saying, these anthropologists or some sociocultural anthropologists are saying that they're practically the same thing. Opposite sides of the same coin means practically the same thing, and even is showing how intimately connected these two are. No, not the opposite. It's showing how close that connection is. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. And again, this is where you can infer this to really say, hey, that the practically the same thing need not be the case. There's a distinction over here. Again, do you see the reading like a manager versus reading like an engineer, where we did not focus as much on this? We summarized this over here as to this as hatred for the alien, but we did focus a lot more on this keyword even and what it emphasized over here. This is kind of the mindset that I want you to take into account. And again, when you're reading like a manager, you're questioning why the author has written what he has written without focusing on the technical details there. Okay. So let's understand this passage. As you can really see, we've done most of it over here. Opposite sides of the same coin. What does that mean? Opposite sides of the same coin. What does that mean? Of one feature. Yes, the same coin means they're essentially the same thing. They're practically the same thing. Okay. So again, don't focus on just the opposite word. Focus on opposite sides of the same coin. Why would the author use the word same coin? No, not. This is a confusion. I'm glad you asked the question. It's a confusion that a lot of people have, and when you think more deeply, you get to it. And these are all good questions. The idiomatic usage, and it's important to know some of these over here. So, what is XP? The author defines XP as hatred for aliens. Okay. Some experts take that connection to an extreme where they say XP and EC coexist, but some other experts disagree. So, what the author is doing there, the author defines this new term called XP, talks about the close connection and how some people think they're very closely connected. That really provides a definition where XP is hatred for aliens, and then it says provides opinions of a few other set of experts where one other set thinks that they coexist, the other one thinks, hey, that the connection can't be that close. Okay. Now, what's the correct inference? It is something which the author believes 100% in, or it's an opinion of the author. That's what a close inference is. Let's talk about how you guys polled here. P1Q2. This is how you guys polled for this particular question in this case. Okay. Choice A says XP and EC are different facets of same concept. Again, is this the author's view? Is this the author's view? No. So this is the view of some experts. So we can't really be 100% certain that the author agrees with it. We can't be 100% certain that the author disagrees with this. So this can't be an inference. Okay, if you want to take a screenshot of this, you can take that screenshot. Okay. Choice B, really popular. Says the canonical variants of EC are closely connected with XP. Does the author agree with this? No, this is a considered view, a deemed view. Okay, we don't know if the author agrees 100% with it. So again, this is not the correct option. People who chose choice B, is that clear? XP and EC are not connected with each other. Actually, no one chose this. In some cases, XP causes EC. There's no cause and effect relationship in there in the passage. So that is wrong as well, which brings us to the correct answer, which is the only thing that the author has provided his opinion on. That is What is XP? Hatred towards or dislike towards the stranger, hatred towards the alien. Okay, that is the definition of XP. This indeed is the correct answer. This is given by the author. Doubts, questions on this? Questions, guys? Doubts on this? Questions on this? Can I show the options once again? Yes. Uh, is option A the author's opinion? Yes. I think that's something. Let me just actually talk about. Let's look at this example. Google, an internet company, is considered a good buy. What can you infer from the from above? Correct inferences are that Google is an internet company, or some people consider Google to be a good buy. The incorrect inferences: Google is a good boy. Google is a good buy. Is this something that's clear from this particular statement? Okay, then the passage is exactly the structure. What is the author saying? In what scenarios can a valid inference be a further extension of what the author explicitly mentions? So when you say a further extension, if the author agrees with it, then yes, it's a valid inference. Also, here is the notion which I want to make sure that I dispel. An inference is what is 100% true based on the information given in the passage, whether it's a CR argument or an RC passage. A lot of people think, hey, this inference has to be a higher order reasoning based on what's there in the passage, which it can be, by which is what we call as a combination inference or a restatement, or in some cases an inference which is an overall inference as well, which is something that you would see in the upcoming passages. But the core definition of inferences, if the author agrees with something 100%, you can infer that. Okay. I'm not going to explain inference versus conclusion because that's the same thing. Okay, so don't even bother going to inference versus conclusion. Okay. What is conclusion? Given a set of statements, what more information can you generate from it? What is inference? Given a set of statements, what more information can you explain from this? Here are the answer choices. The passage is on top once again. XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Do we know whether the author agrees or disagrees? Absolutely not. Variants of EC are closely connected with XP. This is the deemed connection. Okay. They're not connected. Again, we don't know whether the author agrees or disagrees. XP could cause EC. Don't know that there's no cause and effect relationship that's presented here. And this is what the correct inference is. Does inference questions require knowledge or use of syllogism? I actually don't know what that is, to be very honest. So I'm going to say no. Again, remember this GMAT RC is extremely simple, extremely logical. All right. As long as you focus on understanding what it's testing, you'd be able to answer the questions fairly easily. Okay. What is our takeaway so far? So inference and summary differ in terms of author agreement? No, they don't. A summary or a main point includes everything that the author presents. So what the passage is about. That's kind of the main idea of the passage. And inference is what the author agrees 100% with. And so it's an inference could go from just one aspect of the passage, and that's absolutely okay, as long as the author agrees with it. A summary or the main point of the passage has to agree with the entirety of the passage. That's the only difference. As a main idea, and honestly, is a special kind of inference which has to encompass at least 90% of the passage. Does that help? In terms of inference and summary, both of them have to agree with what the author is saying. All right, takeaways. Are we still doing well? Are we still learning information? Are we still moving forward? I see a lot of quiet. Guys, you there? What are the takeaways? What are you going to do differently? How many of you are going to read with more intent? How many of you are going to read with more intent? How many of you are going to focus on understanding what the choice is actually saying? How many of you are going to focus on keyword? That was going to be my next thing. That's good. Yes. So now you get an opportunity to do all of this on a full length passage. Okay, all of this on a full length passage. That's something which is there. But again, if you feel you're way behind where you need to be, uh, don't worry about this. There are people who've gone from very, very low abilities to very high abilities. Why? Because GMAT RC is not about your innate knowledge. GMAT RC doesn't require you to be a voracious reader. In fact, GMAT verbal doesn't require you to be that. There's an example of a guy who improved from had upwards of 100-point improvement on the GMAT. Okay, this guy improved from 19th to 93rd percentile on RC, primarily because he changed how we approached GMAT RC. And again, elementary things. Here's a guy who improved from a 14th percentile in verbal to the 91st percentile. Again, got a V84, which is the 91st percentile on GMAT verbal here, right? Had huge timing issues, but then when he eventually gave the test, was able to excel on everything. You can really see how his accuracy improved. You can see over here, and this is a chart from his e-GMAT platform, how his accuracy improved while his time to answer questions went down. Okay, here's another inference question which I have for you as homework. The answer choices are here. You'll get this in the PDF. With that, let's kind of start with a full length passage. I'm going to clear all, and I'm going to put in a yes no question. When you're done reading the passage, I want you to say yes. So if you can really say no right now, we're done reading the passage, then it'd be great. I'm going to share the passage here. And the way we're going to do this is you're going to read the passage, and then we are going to solve 5 questions. We're going to solve 5 questions one after the other. So here is the passage. It's a full length passage. I'm going to pause myself, mute myself. Good luck, guys. All right, pretty much everyone's done. That's great. I'm gonna actually share the passage once more. And SP3, I'm gonna put it in the Q&A, right above the Q&A part. I see pretty most of you done. That way you guys still have access to the passage. We're gonna now do the poll questions here. The way we do this is I want you to select still solving. Let me reopen the poll before I share the first. So again, 15 people to say still solving. I have 10 people who said still solving. I need 15 of you to say still solving before I show the question. And where I get a good representative sample, I don't poll. I don't time you guys. Here is the first question here. But 70% of the class is done. 80% are done. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I have 3 folks who are still solving. I want you to choose an option. Doesn't matter what it is. Okay. End the poll, broadcast results. Now hide this. We're going to go towards Q2. I want still solving once again before I show the question. Come on, 15 people to say still solving. Good, that is good. Here is your question now. All right, 80% of the class is done. Get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We end the poll, broadcast results. Okay. Here's question number 3. Again, I would like to see still solving. Okay, let me remove broadcast results. Read the question stem carefully before marking the answer choices. 80% of the class is done. Three, two, and one. I'm going to end the poll. We had excellent convergence here. With that, let's go to Q4. Let's get to still solving. Thank you. Here is the question stem. Seventy percent of the class is done. %90 is done. 3, 2, and 1. Now end the poll. And again, excellent convergence here. Last question. Again, still solving. Thank you. %70 of the class is done. %90 is done. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. We have a split jury, A and C. This was a hard question, so that's pretty good that we still converged to choices A and C. So I'm happy with how you guys have done. But before I do that, how do you feel about this? How do you feel? This was a hard passage, yes. This was a hard passage. And I think for me, the big takeaway from this was that, uh, first of all, for every question, um, uh, I got the first correct answer in under 30 seconds, so which was really good for me. So the first time to first correct was 30 seconds or less for every question that's there. And of those who answered the questions correctly, but 70% of the correct answers were in by 50 seconds. Okay. So barring the last question was the only question where you guys took longer, and but barring that, 70% of all correct options were there in under 50 seconds, which kind of told me that many of you are reading the right way. And I think this is something that you guys would have felt as well, because I gave you about a minute, about 90 seconds for every question. So most of you should have about 40 to 40, 30 to between 30 and 40 questions per 30 to 40 seconds per question. Was that right? Most of you had about 30 to 40 seconds to spare between questions, right? Okay. So this was good for me because I see many of you are moving in that right direction, especially because when we asked that question early on, what's the level of understanding of the passage? You wouldn't have this kind of accuracy if the level of understanding hadn't improved to that 90 to 100% here. Okay, let's start with this FNM assert. So really, really important piece over here. So it's not the author who's mentioning something. The author is presenting information. Why? Because it's saying FNM assert that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatment. So we have the authors presenting someone's proposal to really, and it's about improvement in medical research. So if you were to really, take notes, the way you would really do that, and let me actually do this. And as I'm doing this, I'm just going to remove my video because I'm going to be looking down as we do this because I'd be writing on my tablet here. So let's see if I can enable my pen. So it's a medical research can be improved. So this is an assertion by FNM. This is what I'd write by larger, simpler clinical trials of medical. Currently, really important keyword. It talks about what the current practices are. Researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required. Than is again an important keyword. What does than is strictly required tell you? What does this tell you? Comparison. Okay, that's good. What else? That's good. The fact that you identified over the top. Who's making this judgment here? Than is strictly required. The author, yes. Okay. It's the author. So the author is really just saying, hey, this is wasteful. Okay. Really important. Reading like a manager, understanding this, extracting this piece over here. How much more? Substantially more than hospitals collect. So this is where the comparison is. So they collect way more information than hospitals collect. Thereby, what does thereby indicate? The outcome. It's an outcome keyword. Escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. So as per the author, as per the current practices, researchers collect a ton of information. That information collection leads to, so info is over the top. That leads to increased cost. Okay. And how much more? Much more than hospitals. Okay. Although limited information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts. So this is again, although mean I'm going in the other direction, which here the direction was that, hey, they're collecting way more information, and although limited information collection means that I'm kind of trying to defend why they should collect so much information. FNM contends, this is not the author's opinion, but FNM's contention that such risk, never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small in most cases. So it says, hey, this risk is small in most cases. And by the way, this is never zero. So you cannot reduce that risk to zero even if you collect a ton of information. Did everyone infer this, that you can never reduce this risk to zero? As per FNM, right? Only is a really important keyword. Why? Because it always leads to inferences. If you're an e-GMAT, we have a 30-minute module just on only uh, there. Just on the CR side, only in research and entirely new treatments are new and unexpected variables. So this is a special kind of research where unexpected variables are likely to arise over here. So I think we've done the summary here. So here, and if you were to summarize, we have a proposal by FNM, which are the benefits of simpler trial. In this case, have been explained. FNM propose not only means that it's got a second, it'll have another thing over here. It also have but also. The researchers limit data collection, but also that researchers enroll more patients in clinical trials. So there's a second proposal over here, number 2, that you get more patients, thereby obtaining a more representative, what kind of emphasis is this? It's a comparison again. More representative than what? Than what's done currently of the total population under study. Often is also used for what's currently done, what's most commonly done. Researchers restrict study participation to patients with no ailments besides those being studied. So this is what the current practice is. A treatment judged successful under these conditions, ideal conditions. Again, who's referring these as ideal conditions? This is also the author over here, can then be evaluated under normal conditions. So this is a two-step process. So when you see then, first you do this, then you do that, then this means it's a two-step process. Okay. So you have a second proposal. The second one is increase the size of trial. And as per the author, you get a more representative sample. Currently, you first enroll people with just that disease, and then you really uh, test for normal conditions over here. It's a two-step process here. Okay. So we're talking about benefits of a larger trial over here. Let me hide this as well. Broadening the range of trial participants, FNM suggests, again, this is FNM suggestion, would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. So again, you could focus on understanding this, but the big piece over here is this is the benefit of broadening the range of trial participants. That's something that's there. For example, the value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the patient's stage. Patients' ages may also. So this is again examples, enumerations of this over here. Okay. So far, so good. Are you guys with me? Okay, good. In the first one, we're talking about benefits of a simpler trial, collect less data, reduce the cost. Why? Because currently you're collecting too much data. And in the second passage, broaden the range of trial participants. Why? You'll get a more representative sample of the total population under study. Okay, these are two-pronged proposals that the author presents by FNM that can improve medical research. That's my main idea. Two-pronged proposal to improve medical research, explain or presented. You could say explained by, you could also say presented by the author. Okay. Can you guys see the pre-thinking here? Are you guys with me with regards to the pre-thinking? In the main point, always pre-think what the answer is going to be. Also in specific inferences, always pre-think. That way you'll save a ton of time while solving questions here. Let's look at how you guys polled on this question. I think the accuracy was about 50%, if memory serves me right. Yeah, 52%. We got about 31 responses. Choices D and E were most popular. Choice D is the correct one. We'll go through A, B, and D. Choice A says identify two practices in medical research that may affect the accuracy of clinical trials. Okay, two practices is okay, but it doesn't affect the accuracy of trials. Okay, the other thing which is there is the goal really is to really say how they may improve medical research, not just the goal is not to identify them. Describing aspects of medical research that tend to drive up cost. Again, the goal is not to describe, the reason why the author has written this passage is not to describe aspects of current medical research that tend to drive up costs. Again, even though the cost piece is discussed in the first para, that's not why the passage is written. Okay. No one chose choice C, so I'm not going to go over there. Choice D says describing proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted. This is absolutely correct. The author is describing proposed changes. What are the changes? Changes proposed by FNM to ways in which clinical trials are conducted. That's something which is there. Explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials and how such trials are likely to change. Do we know they're likely to change like this? Do we know this part? That those proposals are going to likely to be accepted? No, we don't know that. So this part is wrong, and hence choice E is wrong. People who chose choices A, B, or E, what are your takeaways? How are you going to avoid making this mistake? Guys, how are you going to change this? By avoiding extreme words. But again, what extreme words are likely to change is not an extreme word. Is clinical trial same as medical? It seems also is medical research. Thorough understanding of answer choice. In this context, if the answer choice were correct, you could call medical research. Okay. So because these are medical researchers, all right. So that's where I'm just gonna say this part is okay. This one is not. And the author the choice links this because such trials and medical researchers and clinical trials. You can really see how these are linked in the answer choice. And that's another piece. If the answer choice provides that linkage, then you're okay to infer this. However, this part is what is wrong here. A thorough understanding of answer choice is absolutely good here. That's really important. Make sure you understand, visualize what the choice is saying before you really put this into action to say whether this is correct. Okay. Let's look at choice B here. And guys, I recommend more participation, please, so that we can get to this. Question 2. Let's see how you guys did. 65% chose choice A. Choice A was absolutely correct, but we had choices C, D, and E was somewhat popular. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study? This is really important. What we have to infer about this study where people only enroll ideal patients, so patients who have just that ailment and no other ailment over here. So if you were to go back over here, what could you infer about the study? One is that hey, the study the results are very limiting. They only cover ideal conditions. The second thing is also that you require a two-step process. That's the second inference that you can draw answer choices. So these was it a trap answer choice? Let's just go back to choice E over here. Again, I don't like labeling anything as a trap answer choice, because then that gives you an excuse to really say, oh, I fell for that trap. That's okay because it was designed to be a trap. This is absolutely wrong. So learn from it and never repeat that mistake. Okay. Please don't label anything as a trap answer choice, because in every question, each of the other four answer choices is a trap choice. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. Don't do that label, because then you give yourself a pat on the back, then you don't improve. Rather, understand why you faltered and how you're going to avoid falling in that trap. Okay. Its findings would have limited applicability. That is the correct inference. 70 odd percent of you would got it right. Expense is not mentioned in this context. Anyone who's went for choice B went for first paragraph, not the second paragraph. You're talking about the second paragraph. This study is about the second proposal. It's in the second paragraph, not the first paragraph here. It would be the best way to sample the total population of patients. Now, if you look at the proposal, it's actually the other way. This is not considered the best way to sample the total population. There is, as per FNM's proposal, their proposal seems to be a better way. Okay. It would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk. Again, we're not talking about this in this context. People who made a mistake in choice B, same folks or people were thinking about the same thing in choice D as well. This is about data collection, study one, not study two. So this is study one. This is study one. This is also study one. If you chose either choice B or choice D, you did not separate those studies. You did not understand these were two separate proposals here. People who chose choice E, again, progressive versus non-progressive diseases that act. First of all, the comparison of accuracy in progressive versus non-progressive, you can't draw that inference here. But even before that, this is about FNM's proposal, not the current way of doing things. Again, you did not have the right context in this case. This is about study two, but FNM, the benefits of FNM's proposal versus the current way of doing things, which is what this question is about. People who made mistakes, you either mixed up things between the studies or within a study. You did not understand what the question was talking about. Is that correct? And most of you got this right. That's for me, that's very encouraging. It would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. What information collection do you think it will allow researchers to? As per the information in the passage. As per the information in the passage, limiting information collection. What information collection would it limit? Remember, if you were really thinking with the elements under study, but they've already been chosen that way, right? When you're doing the study, what limiting of information collection could you infer from the information given in the passage? Remember, you've already chosen these patients. Would you not collect how frequently that they, again, not in the scope of the passage, but if you're going there, then I'm going to go into aspects of study. What would you not collect once you have chosen? Right? Got it? Again, keep things simple. Remember that. Let's look at question three. Question three, you guys did really well. 80% of the class answered this correctly. So I'm really proud of you guys as a group. Again, it's about the same thing. What it's saying is this study, which is limited to these patients, what advantage would this study have over the kind of study proposed by FNM? And the first thing is, what is FNM's proposal? Enroll pretty much everyone and their parents, essentially, a broad range of people. What is the current way of doing things? enroll people who just have that disease, have no other disease. So what's the advantage of doing things the current way? And again, this is one of those things where you can do pre-thinking or you can do answer choice elimination over here. So what's the current way? You have to ask yourself, I'm going to restrict participation to patients with no other ailments versus to enroll everyone who may have this ailment, who may have this and other ailments, who may not have any other ailments. And one of the big things which is there is that I can get a clear-cut answer as to whether something would work or not. That's what I can infer. Why? Because if it doesn't work for people who just have that disease, then it's most likely not going to work for people who have this and other diseases over here. Okay. That's kind of what I would go with this, and I'm going to go into various answer choices. Choice A says it would yield more data, findings would be more accurate. Again, we don't know that why the current way of doing things would yield more data, or accuracy is not discussed. Cost, again, in this context is not mentioned. We know it's a two-step process, but we can't really infer that this is going to take cost more. Choice C, it would limit the number of variables. Yes, if they only have one disease, then it would limit what I have to worry about. This seems right. Helping patients identify subgroups of patients. This is, F&M's proposal, not the current way. So this is a disadvantage, not the advantage over there. So this is something which is wrong. If you chose choice D, you again lost context of what the question was talking about. Again, experimental treatment. Again, the passage doesn't talk about experimental treatments. So this one is not correct as well. Most of you got this right. Really proud of you over here. The next one also had really high accuracy. Let me just go here. Q4. 73% of you got this right. Choice A was the only choice that a few of you chose here. So the question is, why does the author mention patient ages? Why does the author mention? The pre-thinking is to really just say, to explain, to showcase, or to provide an example of how enrolling large number of patients could be advantageous. That's something which is there. Okay. Choice A says to identify the most critical variable differentiating subgroups of patients. How do we know it's the most critical variable? Does the passage talk about this being the most, age being the most critical variable? Does the passage talk about this? That age is the most critical variable? No. Then how can you draw that inference? You cannot. Progressive versus why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. The passage actually doesn't answer this question as to why progressive disease may require different treatments. And again, it's a different example, not the same example. But even if you were to merge that, look at the passage. The passage does not give you a reason as to why progressive diseases require different treatments. It doesn't say because progressive diseases have these things, that's why they require at these stages, that's why they require different treatments. The passage does not say any of that. Choice D is correct. Provide an example, illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of patients. Okay. So far, how are you guys feeling about GMAT RC? This was a hard passage. How many of you have gotten 4 out of 4 correct? Let me just put in a yes, no poll question here. If you've gotten 4 out of 4 correct, I'm going to remove clear all answers. 4 out of 4. How many of you have gotten 3 out of 4 correct? I'm going to put in the yes, no poll right here, second poll over here. 3 or more correct. 3 or more correct over here so far. All right, so you can really see this is really good here. I'm really happy. And those hopefully have gotten, fewer than 3 correct. You guys know where you need to improve. And so that's something which would help you. Lots of takeaways. That's good. And again, remember, this is not something where you have to judge yourself. This is a place of improvement. This is what I call as an extremely low risk environment over here. Question 5 says, according to the passage, which of the following describes a result, which means an outcome of the ways in which researchers generally conducted this clinical trials, which means what's the outcome of the current way of doing things. Was everyone able to understand this? This is not the proposed way, but the current way of doing things. Okay. So there are two proposals, and each of these proposals are because of two outcomes. The first proposal is to collect less data. So why? Because the current way of doing things, you waste money by collecting a ton of data. Yeah, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of money wasted. Okay, costs are more, money is wasted. The current way of doing things in proposal 2 is you only enroll a limited set of participants or participants who only have just that disease. The outcome of that is you need two steps. The applicability in real life is limited. So there are two outcomes that are there. That's what my pre-thinking is. I'm going to look for either one of them in the answer choices. Okay. Choice A was my correct answer. 40% of you chose choice A. They expend resources on storage of information likely to be irrelevant to the study that they're conducting. The author mentions that. We're going to talk about this. Choice B says they sometimes compromise the accuracy of their trials by collecting and analyzing more information. Does the author mention anywhere that they compromise the accuracy of the trials? No, there's no mention of reducing or, in fact, increasing the accuracy of trials. So we're not trying to do either one here. Choice C, which 40% of you chose the avoid the risk of overlooking variables. Let's go back over here. If the risk is never entirely eliminable, then do they avoid it? What does avoiding something mean? If you avoid a highway, did you take that highway? No, you did not take that highway. If you avoided studying, then did you study? Absolutely not. Avoiding something means that you don't do this, that it goes to zero. Okay. If the risk can never be avoided or it's never entirely eliminable, then can choice C be correct? Okay. So with that, how are we doing so far? Okay. So I think we are done with our 2 hours of GMAT RC. Hopefully this was useful for you guys. Better than before. So I'm going to share the session PDF with you. Let me just because let me just upload the PDF once again. Where did the PDF go? So remember, the PDF has 3 exercise questions that I want you to work on. And just 1 second, guys. Do we have some upcoming batches? Yes, we have our Coach Connect sessions that are there. Um, so you can download the PDF from here. So we have some upcoming Coach Connect sessions. We have two Coach Connect sessions that are right here. Coach Connect is an add-on that you have on the e-GMAT course. So yeah. And again, you have the entire presentation here, which you can download. So we have an RC session for our paid students. If you are a Coach Connect subscriber, every Tuesday, we have a CR session every Thursday. Both of them tackle inference very, very closely here. Okay, I have Sam's question. I have 3 out of 5 on the passage. How do I improve given the fact that I've exam in 30 days? Do I continue with exam? Okay, with cementing. So Sam, yes, I would really say first of all, build your error log. That's absolutely critical that you do this, and then make sure that you do cementing. Building your error log while doing cementing is one of the best ways that you can do this. Also, make sure that you go through the updated RC files here. So let me share the screen with you. And this is something for all EG matters. We continue to enhance our courses. So when you see these RC application module 2, RC application 3 here, these are uh, uh, these are brand new passages that have been put in over here. So RC application M1, these are brand new passages that have been put in here. Also, if you've not subscribed to Coach Connect, make sure you subscribe to Coach Connect here so that you can attend the sessions and you can go through the homework problems. All of these contain original questions here, and that way you can do that as well. So that's something which is really critical. Similarly, as you go through the Master Comprehension course, we have uh, a brand new module in Master Comprehension that's designed to make sure uh, that you read the answer choices properly. So all of these files have complex questions, complex statements, and you're required to understand the meaning of those statements if you truly want to be able to do this over here. So you can really see understanding references, quantifiers, comparisons. We have complex, sophisticated quizzes here that that will evaluate your ability to read those answer choices and understand this. And as you do that, the fact that you say, hey, these are close answer choices, you're gonna get a lot better. So these are brand new additions that we've done over the last week or so. So make sure that you do that. Does that help you, Sam? What are the timings for live classes? They're all at 7:30 p.m. IST. Um, uh, yeah, which is 7 a.m. Pacific. And again, if you have any questions, please write to Rajat at e-GMAT or support at e-GMAT.com. I'm going to really make sure that you have email address here. Also, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So yeah. So you can connect with me on my LinkedIn and Pile's LinkedIn over here. As you go to on YouTube channel, you'll see a bunch of other helpful resources that are there. Also, for those of you who were asking about the deal, let me share the deal as well. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. Hopefully, that helps you. That gives you a roadmap as to how to move forward when it comes to acing GMAT reading comprehension. If you have any questions, write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Thank you. and I wish you good luck.